How's it going, guys? So as you can probably tell by the title of the video, I wanted to talk about something a little different today. A little bit off topic from the main concern of the channel, and rest assured that stuff isn't going anywhere. But for those of you who follow me on other platforms like Patreon and Instagram, you know that I like to dabble in a little bit of symbolic thinking and, dare I say, even some low-level philosophy from time to time. And I felt like this topic was better suited to more long-form content, so I certainly hope you'll watch it all the way. I think that there's something of value to get out of it, but more importantly, I just think that it's interesting. So I'll talk to you like a friend. This isn't necessarily a video essay, and I hope that you'll indulge me for a moment. Now, I'm a fan of swords and spears and dragons, the men that slay dragons. I'm a fan of fair maidens and magical kingdoms and all the things that make young boys excited for the prospect of life. I like virtue, and I like the things that virtue brings. And I think that perhaps I'm childish for liking such things, but I also think that there are a certain class of men who exist all throughout the world who just cannot pull themselves away from such things. So, even though King Arthur carries a sword called Excalibur, and Master Chief may not carry a sword as such, he does carry one similar to this, and perhaps that will help to illustrate my point as we go about this. Now, perhaps it's best to start off with a little bit of a comparison. Obviously, the stories of King Arthur and the stories of Halo, the first Halo game, I mean, for the context of this video, I understand the things that have changed as the lore has gone on. I am concerned with how the lore is in the first game and how it was intended to be in the first game. And that is how I will be speaking about it in this. But in the traditional myths of King Arthur is, of course, a fated hero. He pulls the sword out of the stone. He's guided by Merlin. He receives the magical sword, Excalibur, from the Lady in the Lake, an avatar of the land. King Arthur, as a truly archetypal ancient king, is an avatar of the land himself, much like in that idealized mythology of the ancient Europeans, the idea of the Sky Father and the Earth Mother. King Arthur, in effect, plays the role of Sky Father. He is responsible for the well-being of the land. He is responsible when the land is fertile and is good ground for living on, bountiful harvests and healthy people. And likewise, he is responsible when the land is bad, when it yields nothing to the people, when it gives nothing to the people, and when the people themselves are sick, both morally and physically. King Arthur, unfortunately, in the end, is a tragic character. Tragic because although he is the king, and indeed is referred to as the once and future king, at the end of the stories we have, at the end of the mythology we have, he is betrayed by two people very dear to him, people he loves so dearly, his wife, Guinevere, and Sir Lancelot, one of his best friends. And what results is the falling of Camelot and the necessary retreat of Arthur from the living world, from the British Isles, to the mystical island of Avalon, where he awaits his return to lead Britain once again when she needs him the most, to be the future king. It's a powerful story, an archetypal story. Obviously, I'm not going into it in great detail here. However, I think that these core bullet points are necessary to lay out for the purpose of our video. And I think that this is a great place to start, as I've laid out some of these simple themes. Now we can truly get into the meat of it, which is Master Chief, Cortana, the Flood, and Halo. Master Chief, John Halo himself, he steps out of the cryopod on the Pillar of Autumn, rushed awake in the Pillar of Autumn's moment of desperation. They've made an unplanned jump to anywhere they can in the galaxy, and fate has brought them to the doorstep of one of the ancient relics of humanity. Master Chief, as quick as he can, takes his armor, his Mjolnir, as fast as he can to the bridge, where he is met with Captain Keyes. Captain Keyes hands him Cortana. And Cortana, we will speak on her very much in this video. Cortana not only is a weapon in and of herself, but she is the weapon, Cortana, the sword of mercy, the blunt-tipped sword that symbolizes the justice that the king holds. Cortana, this divine authority, this divine right to rule, chose John. It was given to John. And with that, John is given a physical weapon, as he is given this metaphysical weapon, for lack of a better word. And we set out upon the events of the game. Now, during the events of this first level, we should say, when we're trying to get clear of the Pillar of Autumn, Master Chief is stoic. He doesn't speak. He doesn't react to what's going on. But Cortana is obviously very emotive. She's characteristically snappy and sarcastic, very emotive, very personable in a way John is not. And that is not just because she is the divine right to rule. Cortana, a multifaceted character she is. Cortana is also John's anima. John, the ego of this complete person, of this stoic warrior king. Unmoving, laser focused on the mission. Relentless in his pursuit. Cortana, likewise his anima, his feminine side, that has been gifted to him, allowing him to become the soldier and king that he has to be, the king that people need, the soldier people need, is gifted his anima, becoming complete, and she speaks to us, the player, but also to John, the whole way through the game. She becomes not just his anima, not just his divine authority, but also takes on the role of Merlin. As we go about the first level, fighting what is obviously, clearly you don't need to be a psychologist to see that the aliens are foreigners. They're foreign, not just to the humans, but they're foreign to that which they seek, the Halo Ring. The Halo Ring being the rightful inheritance of the humans, and the aliens having no real claim to it. And indeed, not only having a real claim to it, but misunderstand its use, and if allowed, will completely destroy everything in their ignorance and in their inability to understand. Then we arrive on the beautiful, verdant magnificent landscape of the Halo Ring, a self-contained world, a little slice of heaven, perfectly built in such a way to present an idealized version of life at the surface. This Halo Ring is the idealized Camelot. It is the idealized nation. It is a walled garden. When you look at it, down, looking at the habitable surface of the ring to the outside, it is, or when you look at the habitable surface of the ring and then you move across it to the outside, it is literally a walled garden. It is a place where they have preserved life and the original intention, even life forms, and have given it a place to stay protected from everything, protected from time, protected from the machinations of that which would do it harm. Of course, at this point, we don't know, and John and Cortana don't know what evil lurks within the ring. So there on the ring, across multiple levels, we fight this foreign invading force, just like King Arthur does. We fight them for control over this idealized world, this Eden, this Camelot. And while fighting these people who are ignorant of the reality of the ground on which they stand, and indeed who it rightfully belongs to, they, in their infinite ignorance, cause the release of the worst possible consequence of strife, and that is entropy to the highest degree. The flood, as a concept, is not hard to read. The flood is a terrible parasite which takes everything different. It takes everything sufficient for its goals, and it makes it all the same, and it strips away that which made it beautiful and unique, that which made it itself, and it forces it into something putrid. It forces it into something writhing and crawling and existing purely to exist. It brings everything into a singularity where everything exists and therefore nothing exists, existing without purpose and never truly dying. The worst possible thing that could happen, because you have no beginning, you can have no end, and it's all simply meaningless. But as I rush through the story, I get ahead of myself. Perhaps we need to hit a little bit more intentionally on the characters. I think we should start with Chief, because the Chief is the least complex of the two main characters that we spend our time with. Chief is Arthur, obviously. He is the fated king. But not only is he the fated king, he is, like Arthur, the once and future king. As you may remember playing through the games 343 Guilty Spark, when we meet him, one of the things he does when he's talking to Chief, one of the many little conversations that they have together, is he mentions how the Chief asks him thousands of years ago, if it was his choice, would he fire the ring? Now, obviously, Chief doesn't remember this, because Chief, as he is now, wasn't there. But for 343 to assume that he was there, well, 343's been around this whole time. I think he would know. 343, the writers at Bungie were making it very clear to us that Master Chief, if not physically the same being, is spiritually, archetypally the same being. So Master Chief exists and inhabits this role of the archetypal king and of the fated king. And, well, you may say, oh, he's not fated. He was put there by circumstance. There was nobody else to fulfill the mission, so he had to. I would say, if you look at the lore, the fact that he, by chance, if you believe in such a thing, by chance, he happened to be eligible for the Spartan 2 program in the first place. He happened to survive the Spartan 2 program. He happened to survive a war with the Covenant until its darkest days, which, we played through in the events of the games, right? He happens to do all of these things. Now, I don't know about you, but I would say that's rather mythopoeic. I would say it's rather fated. And I think not just within this framework we're building, but in the story itself as it is intended when it was written originally, I would argue it is very clear that Master Chief is a fated hero, a fated knight, a warrior king who, by the circumstance of divine authority, was put in the position that he is. And he does everything in his power, as we see through the events of the game, to make the kingdom, to make this walled garden, this Camelot, right. Everything in his power, even to the point where before he knew what the ring would do, he was willing to trust 343, just as he did all those years ago, to fire the ring again. Now, Master Chief. Now we've established that Master Chief is the ego of the whole person, that which the Master Chief and Cortana together make up. He's dedicated to the mission, focused purely on survival and on that which needs to be done, the pragmatic. And he has no space in him for quips or for humor or for self-pity or any of it. He's entirely faithful to the mission, stoic and strong. Exactly the kind of person you want leading you into battle. Make no mistake, Master Chief is the highest honor that a naval non-commissioned officer, or the highest grade that a naval non-commissioned officer can achieve. He's obviously a leader of men. He is the leader of damn near all men in the Navy and Marines. He's a paragon of this warrior virtue. Moving on to the anima of this, she is snarky and she is combative, as we see with the interactions between her and 343. But not only is she his anima, literally the inner woman living within him, allowing him to become him full self. And indeed, while working together, they work far better than they do apart. They're very clearly an integrated pair. She is also an avatar of humanity. If Camelot is if the ring is the rightful inheritance and therefore a rightful kingdom of humanity, Cortana herself is quite literally an avatar of humanity. Not only did she choose her avatar to be that of a woman, and later a scantily clad woman, she exists purely in a metaphysical isn't proper, because she is physical. She does physically exist and she can physically be destroyed, much like the land, but she also exists on a spiritual level, existing inside the head of the Spartan that she's plugged into. She's both spirit and physical, just like the land, the kingdom that the king is married to. So in a way, they are married, but symbolically, Cortana is both part of Chief and she is the land herself, the avatar of humanity, just as Chief is himself and also symbolically the land because he is the proper king. He is properly joined to it. But it does not stop there for Cortana. No, she is also Merlin in a sense, especially once they get into the ring. Cortana has not only the ability to access, but the ability to understand, which is perhaps the most important part, ancient knowledge in the form of being able to access the systems of the Forerunner, the ancient humans which built this Garden of Eden. She has the ability to be able to understand these things, to code them, to make the kingdom bend to her will, which is fitting as she is part of the kingdom, or the kingdom is part of her. As even to make it more obvious how she also inhabits this role of Merlin, as she provides the chief guidance and she advises him on best course of action, but she also literally performs magic if that isn't enough for you. She literally accesses a teleporter system across the grid and teleports Chief inside of a Covenant ship. You know, she's literally performing magic if it's not on the nose for you enough already. Perhaps the most important aspect of her to me, my reading of it, my understanding of it, is Cortana as Cortana. Cortana is associated with the English crown jewels, the Sword of Mercy, which is paired for it. This is obviously the crown jewels, any part of the crown jewels of a kingdom is to symbolize the divine authority. It's meant to, although the Sword of Mercy itself isn't part of the crown is a halo. It is, it is placed on you by a holy, that which is holy, whether you believe it's God or something else, right? It is signifying the divine right to rule, and as an extension, Cortana as the sword, which is paired with the crown jewels of England, is not only just part of the crown jewels, part of that divine right, but it's also very clearly a threat and an offering as the Sword of Mercy for reconciliation. Cortana, as she is placed onto the head of Chief, it's almost like you can't get more on the nose with it. The fact that she's placed on his head, the divine right to rule is placed on his head, given to him, and then of course the events of the game happen. But perhaps that's not enough for you. Well, with the characters and the themes and how I read them all put together, perhaps it's a good time to go ahead and get into the most important half of the game, in my opinion, the second half, and go over why I think that's an Arthurian legend. So to start, we have the release of the flood, the release by the foreign invading army of this terrible entropy which threatens to destroy everything on the land. It threatens to turn foreigner and subject, that is the citizen, into an undifferentiated blob, which will bring no good for anything other than the undifferentiated blob. And the fact that it's a parasite, it seems quite obvious that it's bringing pestilence. It's a sickness. It's not something to be valued. 343 Guilty Spark, knowing what has happened in the past and knowing that worked, begs Chief, asks Chief, almost tricks Chief into it, really, by assuming that Chief understands the shared history that they have together, which Chief is ignorant of because he's a reincarnation, or at the very least, a mythopoeic archetype which has reemerged. Chief almost fires the ring. He almost sacrifices all of the subjects, himself and Cortana. He almost sacrifices everything on the ring and within, I forget how much distance within the ring, but a very long way in the ring to preserve the sanctity of the Camelot, of the idealized Camelot. He almost falls into the trap of continuing the cycle of peacefully, and like Arthur does in the myth, unfortunately, having no other choice but to abandon the kingdom for the kingdom's own sake, to retreat to Avalon, and to come back once more when things are right and entropy is not eating the kingdom from from within itself. Cortana, Merlin, which is indeed his anima as well, his divine authority as well. All of this is contained within Cortana. She calls out to him and tells him not to do it, that he does not understand what he's doing, that it is not just the flood he will sacrifice, but it is everyone. It is the whole kingdom which will be sacrificed, and perhaps most importantly, the lives of the people in the kingdom, which will be sacrificed in order to stop this terrible entropy which threatens the whole land. So he does the proper thing. He listens to his inner voice. He listens to the advice of Merlin. He accepts the burden of having to do not what is easy, but what has the potential to do the most good by the divine right, the divine burden placed upon his brow. And we set out upon the second half of the game. We set out upon doing everything we can to find another solution than simply abandoning all of the subjects, all of the people who King Arthur is meant to save, who Chief is meant to save in their darkest hour. And rest assured, this is the darkest hour of Camelot, when the king has to return, the darkest hour of humanity. So, Merlin, his anima, the divine right to rule, his divine authority which was placed to him, devises a plan, and it is to use their method of transportation, the ship which brought them to the shores of Camelot, that which brought them back to their homeland, to their sacred homeland. They devise a plan to use the engines to destroy the ring itself. And of course, we know that 343, being a proponent of the endless cycle, he has nothing to lose for when the endless cycle goes on. He will not be reset. He will not have to start all over from scratch and await all he simply has to do is to be there and await the coming of the new proper king and lead them back into the same fallacies that they had before. Whereas King Arthur was unfortunately unable to save his kingdom, Chief and Merlin and the Merlin inside him devise a wonderful plan. They say, wouldn't it be better if we sacrifice the kingdom? If we sacrifice this sacred land that we've been given, this rightful inheritance that we have that was given to us by our ancestors, wouldn't it be better to sacrifice the land itself than to sacrifice the virtue and the people of it? And they destroy the Halo Ring, and Master Chief escapes, and he escapes with the most important weapon he possibly could, and that is his divine authority inside of him. He escapes and returns to Earth, and of course we know that, at least within the original writing of the game, it was never intended to be like that, or it was never intended to go further than that. They didn't think that they didn't know for sure that they would get another one, so they made this self-contained game, and now we have this beautiful King Arthur story. So with my reading of Halo laid out how it is, how I feel as though I've laid out my point relatively coherently for not having a script and this mostly just being off the top of my head. It is thought through, but granted, I'm terrible at sitting down and writing a script, and I refuse to make AI do my job for me. So, or my chosen hobby for me. So, here I am spitballing. But why do I think that any of this is relevant to us? Well, if you're watching this, if you decide to click on a video about how Halo is an Arthurian legend, well, I would wager you at least like King Arthur, or you like Halo, or most likely you like both of them like I do. And that you're around the same age as me. And that we as children were children and adolescents, I should say. Maybe children shouldn't be playing Halo, even though I was as a child. But children and adolescents were being given this wonderful pro-life propaganda. Pro-life in the sense that it is affirming that heroes exist. Pro-life in the way that it is affirming the idea that great men make history. And not only do they make history, but they make history good. And that given the right man with the proper virtue at the right time, in the right place, which will be divinely orchestrated, make no mistake, you can potentially fix the world. Now, I know that broadly that's the ethics of Christianity, and perhaps it would be easier to draw that conclusion, but I dislike making messianic comparisons where I can, and would rather make a little bit more pointed and topical, or maybe focusing on one topic, comparisons where I can. I think it's more useful. So I think seeing Chief as King Arthur, not only does it, in my mind, make sense, but in my mind, it's what made Halo so great to us. It's what made all the games like this of our childhood so great for us, because men held aloft swords and they said, you know what? We can just fix the world with swords when things are sufficiently bad enough. And I think that's becoming ever more prevalent today. I think that the time of great men of history is coming back. And I wonder sometimes if the fact that so many of the things that men around out my age, perhaps our age, were inundated with when we were young, perhaps it is no cosmic coincidence that you were fed these things as young, that you were fed this propaganda of great men. You were fed this propaganda that the proper king can show back up at any time which God or fate or whatever you prefer decides is the proper time. And not only will you be given the opportunity to fix it, or he will be given the opportunity to fix it rather, but that he will fix it in the highest form possible. And that the future is hopeful, even when it's at its most bleak, which I suppose Halo, broadly speaking, on a very extremely surface level view, is about, that at the end of the day, humanity is going to somehow pull it out, because that's just who we are. We're going to get through it. Our strength is our adaptability. But definitely let me know what you guys think. I'm going to try and edit things in where I can that will support my case. I certainly hope that will help. But most of all, if you like this and you like my content, I would really appreciate if you would share it around. I would love and I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. I'm very interested if this is just me schizo posting into the ether, or if other people share my view of this, and perhaps this isn't as unique as I think. Definitely let me know. I love Halo, but I'm not gonna make the channel about it by any means. If this does well, though, I'll definitely experiment with more schizo posting into the ether in between the gun and gear reviews. So thank you so much if you watch this. I really appreciate it. I hope that I went into enough detail for you, but not too much, like I said, or like I think I said before, is I wanted to treat this like talking to a friend at work. So thank you so very much for listening, and have a good one.
I would absolutely fuck up a flood combat form with this bad boy.
Oh, yeah.